we are very much on the road to creating a new division within the fashion industry for different shaped bodies, for people with disabilities that just want to wear the same clothes as everyone else.
Yeah. What's really cool about your whole approach is that it's really has nothing to do with fashion. It's all about letting people embrace who they are and saying you matter.
I never cease to be amazed by how many aspects of everyday life that I have overlooked as yet another challenge for those with disabilities, including the sizes and shapes of clothes. Today, our guest is Mindy Scheier, and she is the founder and CEO of Runway of Dreams Foundation. My name is Seth Carnell, and this is the Go Shout Love podcast. I have had the immense privilege of being a part of Go Shout Love and meeting wonderful families that deal with these day-to-day challenges. But there are always things that I haven't considered before, and it's incredible to hear how these families first come across certain struggles and then, with all the love that they have, face them head on. Mindy is a talented and driven fashion designer. Her son was diagnosed with rigid spine muscular dystrophy. This is a rare diagnosis, and he is a boy who simply wanted to go to school wearing a pair of jeans. This inspired Mindy and ultimately inspired Runway of Dreams. Runway of Dreams Foundation is a nonprofit organization that works toward a future of inclusion, acceptance, and opportunity in the fashion industry for people with disabilities. Her story and journey is incredible and has really helped pave the way for changing the world of fashion and the world of those with disabilities at the same time. Ending that quote earlier and leading this conversation is Josh Veach. He is one of the co-directors of Go Shout Love. Please take a second when you are done to rate and review this podcast, and here is Josh.
Well, hey, Mindy, thank you so much for being on the podcast and taking time out of your busy schedule to do this. Well, do you know a little bit about Go Shout Love? Have you been able to have a quick rundown?
I'd love to hear from you also.
Okay, awesome. So basically what we're doing, every month we're designing a t-shirt that's inspired by a child on a rare medical journey, and then we leverage the power of social media to tell their family's story all month long, and then 50% of gross profit during the month goes directly to that family to help with any needs that they have in caring for the child. So in the last, since we, long story short, the brand was alive for a couple years. It took a 2-year break, and then my wife and I took it over and kind of relaunched it in July of 2018. And then since that time, we will, after we finalize all of February's numbers, we will have given away over $100,000 to families.
Spectacular. It's really spectacular.
That's gone to helping make homes more accessible, helping purchase handicap accessible vans, helping one child that was terminal go on a bucket list trip to Disney World literally just a few weeks before he passed away with his family. So that's kind of the work that we're doing. So we're a for-profit, cause-driven business, but we lead with the families. It's all about telling the stories of these families, helping these families feel loved and supported, and then hopefully being able to help in a tangible way with some funds. And so, that's what we're all about.
Just amazing.
Thank you.
And I apologize for not knowing this, but do you have a personal connection? Do you have a child with a disability?
I do not. No. And so kind of what the background there is, Kristen Estock, who was the initial contact with you and your team, she actually started Go Shout Love back in 2014. And she also did not have a direct connection. Hers was, she had a friend of a friend who had been diagnosed with they had just had a pregnancy, had a baby, and that after birth, that child was diagnosed with SMA. And Kristen was just kind of also a new mom at the same time. And I think just this swell of empathy kind of overtook. And so she said, at the time she was blogging, and so she just wanted to reach out to this family and say, hey, can I tell your story? And that turned into some Instagram auctions, which then turned in the idea of creating its shirt. And so, yeah, that was kind of the start.
Magnificent. Really. Honestly, it's beautiful that
you.
so engaged without, a direct personal connection. I mean, now it's very personal, I'm sure, from all the stories that you've heard and the families you've worked with.
Right.
But that's really, really beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. It's an opportunity for us to grow. And it's, a lot of times that we don't know what we don't know. And a lot of times we live and we operate out of an ignorance, and we can either choose to seek out those gaps, those missed opportunities in our lives where we are ignorant, or we can try to pretend they don't exist. And so for us, we want to learn. We want to have meaningful conversations and not only be a catalyst for others to learn, but also grow ourselves. And so that's kind of why we're doing what we're doing.
Amazing. I'm incredibly grateful that I get to be a part of this.
So, Mindy, tell us about Runway of Dreams, what it is, and how it came to be.
So I am a fashion designer by trade. I was that little girl that dreamed of being in fashion, and I truly lived out my dreams. I went to study fashion design in college. I lived in Italy, studying it there, and truly felt that I had it all. I got married. I had 3 kids. I had a wonderful career in the fashion industry, and was definitely on my way. And as I'm sure many of your listeners can understand, life had a different path for our family. As our middle child, Oliver, was born with a rare form of muscular dystrophy. It's called rigid spine muscular dystrophy, and he's one of 70 cases in the world.
Wow.
So they actually know very little about his form. They're slightly learning as he's growing, and that in and of itself is, a really challenging place to be in, because there's no necessary path of where life is going to lead Oliver. So we very much take everything day by day, which kind of leads into how Runway of Dreams was formed, as we realized early on with Oliver's form of muscular dystrophy that very much affected the shape of his body, his spine, and gross motor skills. So everyday tasks, such as dressing himself, was a humongous challenge, and something that every single day he would have to watch his brother and sister very easily button their shirts or put on their shoes, and he would not be able to do any of the above.
Sure.
I had to, really think through things that generally most parents don't have to when they're sending their kids to preschool. And that is, how is he going to go to the bathroom on his own? With anything that has buttons or zippers in it, or that he would have to fit his leg braces under. So our solution was that he wore sweatpants every day. And, as stereotypical as this sounds, it didn't seem like that big of a thing, because he was a boy. It felt, very typical. And so...
yeah, it's comfortable and convenient. Yeah.
Exactly. Off to school he went in sweatpants every single day. And when he was 8 years old, he came home from school and said, "Mom, I want to wear jeans to school tomorrow." And I looked at that little 8-year-old face, and I had a choice. I could either say back to him, "I'm so sorry. That's just something that you cannot do based on having muscular dystrophy. It's not an option for you." Or I could have looked at him and said, "You bet you're wearing jeans, and we're going to figure this out, and tomorrow's going to be a really big day." And there was no other choice than the latter. And so he went off to bed that night, and admittedly, I probably sat at my kitchen table and cried for at least the first hour about how in the world did I miss this? Here I am in the fashion industry. I care profoundly about what I wear every day, what I look like, how I show up to the world. And I needed my 8-year-old to remind me of the importance that clothing has on who you are as a person. So I took a pair of his jeans that normally he would never be able to wear unless my husband and I were kind of nearby to help him go to the bathroom and manage his leg braces and whatnot. And I started just ripping them apart. I took out the zipper and cut up the side seams and replaced everything with peel and stick Velcro, because that's just about all I had at 2:00 in the morning to deal with. And when Oliver woke up the next day and I showed him my arts and crafts project, otherwise known as jeans, it was an immediate transformation that came over him. Not only was it the first time he was ever able to dress himself independently, but it was the first time he ever went into school with anything else other than sweatpants.
Yeah.
And what that moment did for me, as a side of what it did for him, but it exposed me to this notion that if Oliver at 8 years old was struggling with this, how in the world did the almost 1 billion people on our planet who have a disability, how did they manage their clothing challenges in situations other than what Oliver was experiencing, just being typical in school, having options? How did they handle interviews or proms or all the milestones in our life, or just even every single day getting dressed? How did they manage all of this? So I started kind of Googling clothing for people with disabilities, and what came up, and actually I strike that. I actually Googled clothing for kids with disabilities, and what immediately came up was clothing for the elderly, or those that were medically fragile. It was absolutely nothing I would have ever dressed Oliver in, and there really wasn't any options for kids anyway.
Right.
So this really became a crossroads in my life, that I thought that maybe this was the moment that I'm supposed to take my background and have a goal of changing the fashion industry to be inclusive of people with disabilities. And this was back in 2013. I decided to sell my company that I was running at the time to my partner, and just go headfirst into this world that I knew very little about. I only knew my world with Oliver. I did not know what somebody that was in a wheelchair full time, or had a limb difference, or had Down syndrome or autism, or all the other disabilities out there, what their clothing challenges were and were their commonalities. So this was back in 2013, and I decided to start Runway of Dreams, with the goal of changing the fashion industry to be inclusive of people with disabilities. But I knew that I could not go on this journey only with the knowledge of my world with Oliver. I had to really get a deep, deep understanding of the population of people with disabilities. So I did an entire year of research. I went to schools and hospitals and went to do focus groups and surveys, and really completely immersed myself into the population. So I was fully educated on clothing challenges and commonalities between vastly different disabilities. Yeah. And thankfully was able to extrapolate after that year that there were commonalities, and that clothing could be modified, mainstream clothing could be modified to make it easier for people with disabilities to wear. I developed prototypes, and then started reaching out to anybody I knew in the fashion industry. And unfortunately, February 2016, we partnered with Tommy Hilfiger and developed the first ever mainstream adaptive clothing line that started out for kids, but now has become Tommy Adaptive, which is available for kids and adults. We also now work with Zappos on the Zappos Adaptive platform, Kohls and Nike and Target, who are all very much in the game of creating adaptive. And we are very much on the road to creating a new division within the fashion industry for different shaped bodies, for people with disabilities that just want to wear the same clothes as everyone else.
Yeah. What's really cool about your whole approach is that it's really has nothing to do with fashion. It's all about letting people embrace who they are and saying you matter. You may have a different body type, you may have a different ability, but you matter. And one of the things I love about the messaging that you have personally as well as an organization is that clothing equals confidence. And yes. I don't think you can put it better. I want to jump back to a couple parts of your story.
Yeah.
First question, you mentioned that night where Oliver said, "I want to wear jeans tomorrow." What was the timeline between? How long did it take from that moment to start kind of stirring in you to when you sold your company and dove into this all in? What was the timeline for that?
Well, I think this will certainly help with that I was never able to think small. When I wanted to be a fashion designer as a little girl, I wasn't going to be just a fashion designer. I was going to be a global brand.
Yeah.
I was going to be the next Betsy Johnson. So once that moment happened with Oliver and I started really investigating what options there were for this thing called adaptive clothing that I had never heard of. And here I was already at that point, had been in the fashion industry for over 20 years. It was fairly quick that I would say it was probably within a month that I kind of had to sit down with my husband and explain that this is something I felt that I needed to do for not only our family, but for the population at large. I felt that, I was given the gift of having the knowledge of how to do this. But I always have to give my husband so much credit because we went from a 2-income family to a 1-income family. And for everybody out there listening that does have a member of their family with a disability, that in and of itself is an unbelievable financial undertaking.
Sure.
So it was really I have to give him so much gratitude for allowing me to do this and really putting our family into a different position because it was so important to both of us to create a world that Oliver could grow up in where, as you said so beautifully, that people with disabilities were being considered for something that is a basic need, and that's clothing.
Right.
And that they deserve to have everything that everybody else gets to have in terms of choices and identity and carving out who you are in this life. So I would say it was, between a month or two, I was knee deep. I was out of my other company and really was like very much on my path.
Yeah. You talked about that you had, you were not new to the fashion industry. You're seasoned at this point. You have a lot of experience and you were on your way, as you put it. How did the industry and your colleagues and those around you, how did they respond to you making this probably in their minds pretty sudden shift in direction of your future? What was that like? What was their response?
Well, I would say I really was a little bit head down for that year of research. I felt that I didn't even want to necessarily talk about what my goals and ideas were until I was very clear about what I was speaking about.
Yeah.
And I felt that the education portion of this, that I really, really needed to be an expert, so to speak, was important before I kind of went out with my big idea. I think I just kept referring to something, really exciting that I was working on. And this was, going to change the fashion industry. I very much doubt that anybody had any idea that it was going to be this.
Yeah.
I really felt strongly about that. I wanted to be very, very prepared when I did come out with the idea.
We at Go Shout Love felt like we needed to take a pause from our normal schedule and be present in this moment. We have a wonderful family that we planned to introduce in April, and you will get to meet them, but we are doing something a bit different this month. In April, we have launched 3 new designs that are aiming to help remind us that we are all in this together, that we should be responsible to and for each other. That is why we are teaming up with Laughing at My Nightmare and their COVID-19 relief program, which is sending gift cards to people with disabilities who need a bit of assistance during this season. Go to our website, Go shout.love and shop around and help us shout love and make an impact. Besides these great shirts, there are hoodies, mugs, hats, and more. 50% of gross profit from all sales during this month will go to that COVID-19 resource relief. If you want to know more about Laughing at My Nightmare, check out last week's podcast episode with Shane Burkaw and Hannah Aylward.
So when you did kind of launch that idea with all your research and all of the hard work, the back end work kind of done, what was the reception like? I'm assuming you started by reaching out to your network of people, of colleagues in the industry. Mm-hmm. How did they receive? Was it open arms, or was there a lot of pushback, or what did that look like?
So when I first started seeding the idea, to trusted people, obviously in the industry, the response was almost the same from every single person. Everybody said, "Oh my God, what a great idea. That's amazing. Good for you. What a mom you are doing this for your son. But let us know how it goes. Good luck to you." Mm-hmm. And keep us posted. No one was willing to take a chance on something that had never been done before, certainly from a mainstream brand. And very much were under the impression that people with disabilities were a niche market, small, that, they didn't have money to spend on clothing, nor did they, that wasn't even, a priority in their life. So what, started once many people were kind of on the same theme, one of the things that I always encourage anybody that's an entrepreneur or trying to start their own business, if the doors are not opening for you, or the path that you're on is not leading you to where you need to go, you got to take a look at what the goal was, what your goals are. And my goal was to change the fashion industry to be inclusive of people with disabilities. And the way that I was going after it from a for-profit model was not working. Mm. And it wasn't working because nobody was willing to take a financial risk on something that's never been done before.
Right.
Nobody wanted to be the first. So I had to pivot, and one of the ways that I felt that I could approach this was by taking the financial risk off the table. And the best way to do that was to become a nonprofit.
Okay. So your initial avenue was, I want to launch a business or within a larger brand, you were starting from it as a business, as a
without a doubt.
Okay.
100%. I knew nothing about a nonprofit. I had always been in, the industry, and even started my own company. The nonprofit world to me was leap years away.
Yeah.
From anything that I knew about, other than raising money for muscular dystrophy. That was just about the extent of my knowledge of a nonprofit.
Got it.
So I, simultaneously had to not only pivot the model of how I was going to do that, but I had to figure out how to do it.
Right.
I didn't even know what a 501c3 was. I was really starting from scratch.
Right.
And, one of the best things that I do is know what I don't know, mm-hmm. or what I'm not educated in, and reach out to those that are. So I started, reach out to anybody that I knew that was in the nonprofit world, and really got myself educated in lightning speed. And in 2014, officially became a nonprofit. And then suddenly doors started opening. Mm-hmm. And, the interesting part about that is, as, a mother of a child with a disability, I classically am, sensitive to the fact that everybody automatically thinks that people with disabilities need to be part of nonprofits, that it's all fundraising and it's all, kind of charity driven. And I had to, kind of go against what I necessarily believe in to make this happen, because I knew that the market would reveal itself. Mm-hmm. I knew that once I was able to get companies to believe in this and take a chance on this, that they would see very quickly that this is not an initiative, that this is a business opportunity, and that this is something that should be considered in the same way as plus size and petite or big and tall, right, or maternity. It's just a different aspect of the industry and who a consumer is. And that really is exactly what happened. The moment that we partnered with Tommy Hilfiger and this became public, the population showed up exactly how I knew they would. And, revealed that this is an enormous business opportunity for brands to take part of. And the beautiful part about, having to pivot and create something that, again, I really had no idea what I was doing, was not only did we get to accomplish our goals, that Adaptive is now very much becoming a part of the fashion vernacular, but it also allowed us as a foundation to develop programs that are really helping millions of people. So I'm so incredibly proud of what we had to do to create the goals that we now have garnered.
Yeah. So now tell us how you come alongside of these brands now, as if you're not specifically making the apparel, or what's the relationship in your partnership with Tommy Hilfiger and Nike and Zappos and these other brands? Tell us how that relationship works.
Well, we are now serving certainly as a support system to bridge the gap between the brands and people with disabilities. We do that not only through, I do a tremendous amount of speaking and traveling and, trying to support our brand partners by educating the population that here are major brands that are creating products for them. Number one. And number two, really also using our platforms like our fashion shows that we do during New York Fashion Week, that we put the product on our runways. We are the only completely driven fashion show that only has people with disabilities on the runway. And they are wearing product from all of the above mentioned brands that we are bringing exposure to, but also we are helping to support in really, giving feedback, having the population bring feedback to the brands about, ways to make it better, what's working, the support, all of the above. So we are really trying to work side by side with these companies to help, again, bring the products to those that need it and make them aware, and also just support companies that are really making this a priority. So much so that actually as of September, I launched another company, actually a for-profit company by the name of Gamut Management, that we solely represent people with disabilities from a talent management perspective. As organically, what happened over the past couple of years is that all of these brands started reaching out to Runway of Dreams to be connected to people with disabilities, whether that is to be a part of focus groups or to fill out surveys or to be in commercials or feature films. There was seemingly no place that industries could go to have a direct connection to the population. So we started a management company that only represents people with disabilities.
Got it. That's super cool. One of the things that I love too about Runway of Dreams is you are intentionally investing in the future of the industry through your scholarship program. You have these designers or whatever roles they may have, but at different universities. And I think it's so cool that you are, before they're entrenched in profit-driven mass market appeal type of thinking, you're helping them arrange their brain around equitable spaces for all people. And I think that is incredibly cool as an organization of what you're doing.
Thank you. Absolutely. I'm so happy you highlighted that, because if we don't inspire the next generation of designers to make this a mainstream notion in the world of fashion, then we're not going to truly be able to reach a goal that someday, hopefully, we don't even need to talk about this, because adaptive clothing is just a part of the fashion industry.
Right. It's just assumed. It's assumed for all.
Just
yeah.
Assumed. And actually, on that note, also, we launched at the beginning of 2019 Runway of Dreams college clubs, that we are on 12 campuses across the country now, and actually have 12 more emerging in 2020, for the exact same reason, that whether these students are in the world of design or not, it's really reshaping the way that they think about their peers that have disabilities, and understanding that they are the same as them. And so these college clubs are sharing the mission of Runway of Dreams, but also they are tasked with having their own adaptive runway shows on campus, that they have to include students with disabilities and or other clubs that focus on people with disabilities to include them in the shows. So I am so in awe of, the college age demographic. They are so socially conscious and so excited and passionate about companies that are just doing good in the world.
Yeah. I want to jump back to a little bit of more of the personal side of your story just for a second. So in 2013, when you kind of had this aha moment with Oliver, he was 8. And so is he 15 now? Is that right?
Wow. Good. Yes.
So what change have you seen in him in the last 7 years, and in what ways has clothing impacted that growth?
I would say the most amazing change that really was born out of Runway Dreams and the notion of having clothing that he can independently dress and is the same as everybody else. Even further reaching than that is really the notion that he feels less alone. With having a disease 70 people in the world have, the reality is he may never meet anybody in his lifetime that has what he has. And that is a very lonely thought. And I think having him exposed to everybody that's been involved in Runway of Dreams, or seeing the outreach of the population in terms of being exposed to people that also have very rare diseases or not rare diseases, or all the unbelievable things that he's witnessed of being a part of this has given him a sense of community, and really feeling a part of something, which is a gift that I can't even put words around. That way, I was able to provide that, or I should say Runway of Dreams was able to provide that for him. My other children too, that they, are growing up surrounded by a world that they see no difference now of people with disabilities and not. It's very much a part of our everyday life.
Sure. What advice would you give to a mom, or even dad for that matter, that kind of finds themselves in the face of a similar aha moment where they recognize a challenge or something that's they're realizing is unique to their son or daughter, but is maybe they're kind of seeing where some of, like where you were, where their skill sets or their passions might align to something that could be beneficial not only to their child and many others, but they're kind of faced with that fear of, what do I do with this? You chose to, you like you said, you've never gone small. You went all in. What advice would you give to somebody that's finding themselves in a similar position of, should I pursue this opportunity or this thing? Should I take that chance, take that risk?
I thank you for asking that question, because I think it's a really important one, and one I certainly like to underline. That, I mean, I am in awe of the amount of people that have reached out to me with their ideas and the brilliance of what they have created based on need. And they did find themselves in the exact same position. And the reality is that not everyone, needs to go big or have this notion of changing the world like I did. If what they developed or created could change the life of even one other person, that is something that is as prolific and important as what we have created. So I continue to give the advice that share it. This is amazing what you've done. And I'm really trying to take that role as well to really help, other entrepreneurs or people that have come up with brilliant ideas to, get out there and talk about what they've done, show what they've done. They don't have to align with the Tommy Hilfigers of the world. If they can help even one person, that is changing the world.
Yeah.
So, and don't be, and most importantly, if doors are not opening or walls are being put up, find another way. There's always another way. And it might not be the way that you ever envisioned or even have experience with, but I am living proof that finding another way can work. And you just have to keep your eye on the prize and the goals that you set out for, whatever that may be, as big or as small as you want it to be. But don't stop, because your ideas can help other people.
That's so good. I have one final question for our listeners. If they're listening and this is maybe a new concept for them, they've never really thought about adaptive clothing because they've never been in the reality of needing it. What would you say for them as a next step to help them move into becoming more of an advocate, specifically in the area of adaptive clothing?
Well, one thing that I always like to say is, tomorrow morning when you go to get dressed, just take 1 minute and imagine what life would be like if you had no options. If you had to lead that meeting that you have today in sweatpants and a t-shirt because that's all that you could dress yourself in. Or if you can't button your button, or if you needed somebody to dress you full time. These are very real things that happen every single day in the lives of people with disabilities, and something that is, able-bodied people, and something, I am living proof. I worked in the industry my entire career. I never even heard of the word adaptive until Oliver came into my life. And it so profoundly affects who you are as a person that even if you think for 1 minute tomorrow morning about how that would impact your life, then talk about it. Go throughout your day and say, wow, I never thought about how important clothing is to who you are as a person. And this is, really exciting what Runway of Dreams is doing, or how the fashion industry is really running with this. But conversation can go a long way. So even if you take 1 second to think about that and then speak about it and go on and support us would be unbelievably helpful to the 1 billion people we have on our planet with a disability.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the quotes that I heard you say and I love is that conversations make change happen. It's that conversation that takes it from the idea to voicing it out there where it can grow and gain momentum and kind of snowball, and then it actually impacts change. And so
exactly.
Thank you so much for your courage in taking that moment to advocate for Oliver and give him the chance to go to school in jeans, but then to not stop there. Obviously, many thousands of people and millions of people are going to be impacted and are impacted by the work that you guys are doing. And so we're incredibly thankful to have the chance to have this conversation. And so before we wrap up, how can our listeners connect with you and follow along your story, and specifically Runway of Dreams as well?
Thank you. And first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's opportunities like this that really are critical to our mission. So thank you so much. Please go to runwayofdreams.org and to find out how you can get involved. And just learn more about what we do. And if there's any aspiring talent out there, and again, we think talent is just having a voice in change, whether that is being a part of focus groups or being in a feature film, you can go to gamutmanagement.com and find out how to join.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And we will be sure to include those items in our show notes as well. So Mindy, thank you so much. This has been so good, and I know you're super busy, and so it means the world that you would take a few minutes to chat with me and share your story with our listeners. So thank you so much.
We are very grateful to Mindy for joining us. Please check out runwayofdreams.org to know more about who they are. There was a quote at the end there that has really stuck with me, and I would really like for it to stick with you as well. Conversations make change happen. That is why I love this podcast, and that is why I love these conversations. They are important, and they make a very lasting impact. Speaking of which, we have more impactful conversations headed your way, so please stay tuned. And when you are done listening, go ahead and rate and review this podcast. Not to be redundant, but that is a large part of these conversations making a larger impact by reaching someone who may need to hear it. That is only enhanced with more ratings and reviews from shouters like you. Thank you for listening, and as always, go shout love.